Lately, there has been this trend on the internet of people claiming that they know the true identity of the knight. Multiple real life and also fictional characters have been falsely portrayed as the true form of it. This is obviously stupid, childish, and idiotic, so allow me to debunk all of these and present my own ultimate theory. First, I'm going to disprove each singular theory that came before with arguments of my own. I use this playlist by E91 Unknown to determine what videos have been published. At the time of making this video there are 13 theories. Also, obviously, Hollow Knight and Silksong spoiler warning, so go play the games and come back to this monumental video once you're done. Beginning with why the knight is actually Karl Marx. Nugent, the creator, states in the very opening statement of the video that the Hollow Knight is a game and misinformation is fun. While the first point of the video is correct, the second is false. Misinformation isn't fun. Therefore, the following theory cannot simply be accepted as the objective truth. As Wikipedia states, misinformation is incorrect or misleading information. Therefore, the information in the video is false. That is less important, however. In the history of misinformation, we can find lore about the misinformation spread in the year of 1587 about the victory of the Spanish Armada against the British. Wikipedia says, a Spanish victory was incorrectly celebrated in Paris, Prague, and Venice. It was not until late August that reliable reports of the Spanish defeat arrived in major cities and were widely believed. Imagine how stupid all these people must have felt. That feeling isn't fun, therefore misinformation isn't fun. Therefore, the information is false because it isn't fun and we are being lied to. Next up, debunking. The knight is actually Karl Marx, he is LeBron, Hollow Knight. Cookie Competent at the beginning of the video states that the knight is LeBron James while drawing an arrow from the knight to a picture of who is seemingly LeBron. However, if you take a closer look, it's actually an edited photo of this person. This means that everything he says next is false, as he does not actually talk about LeBron James, but about this person. Not only that, but also, the video states that the reason that the knight can jump so high is because LeBron is just built like that. However, the knight could jump over at least 2.5 of himself, while LeBron's max vertical height according to Google AI overview is 44 inches, which is only about half of his height. Nowhere near to the jump the knight has. The next on the list is debunking. Debunking, the knight is actually Karl Marx, he is LeBron, he is Genghis Khan, HK. Now, this video was really difficult to find arguments against. I must say he has done his research. However, I found holes in his theory to disprove the idea that the knight is actually Genghis Khan. So, in Silksong we can find guns. Now this wouldn't be impossible to encounter during the time Genghis Khan lived, but do you know what else we can find? Money guns. Now this is not an invention that was made during the time of Genghis Khan's life. The first money gun, according to Wikipedia, was invented in the 20th century, way after Genghis Khan's life. Now someone could argue that there is just a huge gap in time between Silksong and Hollow Knight. But that is incorrect, as spider silk, which we know Hornet's cloak is made of, can last for at best 4 years. This means that the games are no further apart than 3 years. The second point the Bogdan 100 ping makes is that the knight started a revolution against the Radiants. This cannot be true, because a revolution, as Wikipedia states, requires some form of mass mobilization. We never see the knight do this, as it and Hornet are the only ones who actually participate, and 2 people are not enough for a revolution. Following that is he actually Sayori? Debunking, the knight is actually Karl Marx. Now, clearly this guy does not really know what he is talking about. First of all, he states that the knight's cape is a scarf. This goes against not only everything we know from the previous videos, but to game lore as well. As the knight progresses, we see him acquire Mothwing Cloak, so the game even clearly states what it is. Aside from that, the video states that Sayori gives you, I would like to highlight that, you specifically, flowers, and he claims that there is a similarity to the knight who gives flowers to other characters. This is clearly a thematic lack of understanding of Doki Doki, as the game's narrative is heavily meta and involves not your character, but rather you as a person who builds the relationship with Sayori. The picture of Sayori giving you flowers, therefore, clearly means she's giving the flowers to you as the player of Doki Doki rather than the protagonist, and therefore there is no similarity to the knight who gives flowers to other characters. Next up is the knight is Karl Marx debunked. The creator, Atumi, states that the knight is Rei Ayanami from Evangelion. Of course, I am an avid anime watcher myself, so I have authority on this topic. We do see Rei having the same color palette as the knight, but what he has failed to notice is that Rei is a woman. And as we do know, the knight does not have a gender. This is a huge argument ender in most cases for these videos, as the knight's way of birth excludes him from having one. Now Rei is clearly female, and I don't recall her identifying as anything else during the show. There could be a case for her robot, but not necessarily for herself. Another argument that he makes is that the knight is actually one of the Abyss siblings. Now this is possibly true, but I do have an argument that might convince you of the opposite. The knight, as we see in the game, can leave a shade upon death. This shade, however, is quite close to the form of the knight, with an intact cloak and retained abilities. Now the siblings appear as though they have been ripped from their shell, because the lower half of each sibling appears to be frayed. This indicates that the way the knight dies is actually fundamentally different from the siblings. As a side note, this is actually a really interesting subject in the Hollow Knight lore, and you should go check out Sisimakai's video on cloaks. Another video is the knight is Karl Marx debunked. I applaud this creator for taking his time and actually disproving all the arguments made before. I must say that the points he makes are rather convincing and I agree with them. However, he completely fumbles the bag during the explanation part. He claims that the knight is Billie Eilish and says he will use color theory to prove that it is her. However, what he forgets is that Billie Eilish's color palette is completely different from the knight's color palette. The natural color of Billie Eilish's hair is blonde, which is nowhere to be seen on the knight. The next video is Debunking. The knight is a Karl Marx debunked. The point Apollo 77 makes is that the knight is Isaac from the game Binding of Isaac. He first states that the knight is a kid. Now clearly the knight cannot be a child. We do know that the knight was born before Hornet. This is because Hornet is said to have spent little time with her mother, who was supposed to become a dreamer. Now the timeline here is a bit messy, so let's analyze what we have. After the infection appeared, the Pale King and the White Lady created the vessels through smashing and throwing the eggs into the abyss immediately after. Now here we don't really know what happened. Did the Pale King just kinda stand there in front of the abyss and wait for the vessel to come? Did he leave and start looking for dreamers? Maybe he sent the 5 great knights to inform them. Maybe they knew how long it would take the eggs to hatch and left. In any case, it was presumably during the Hollow Knight's training that the Pale King would go and try to get the dreamers, and had the bargain with Hera. So, if the knight was alive during the time the Hollow Knight left the abyss, then it means that it is older than Hornet. And Hornet, as we know, is older than Elderbug, the guy who legit has Elder in his name. So the knight cannot be a kid like Isaac. Another point that Apollos makes is that the knight got isekai'd. Now, as far as I'm aware, for the isekai to occur, there needs to be a truck involved, and neither the knight or Isaac die because of the traffic accident. After this comes The knight is Karl Marx, debunked, 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 debunked. The creator, hey I have no clue, is actually lying in the name of his channel, as he does have a clue, since his arguments that the knight is sans are actually quite convincing. However, they aren't convincing enough. He states that the knight has a bone-colored and shaped weapon, much like sans. Now I have no idea who would say that the nail is that. I am not aware of any bone that is shaped like that, or colored like that. The nail, as we know, is made from this weird metal called pale ore. Despite being of unknown origin, it seems to be native to Hollownest, as we do not see it in Silksong. He later states that the knight has a skull-like face. However, we do know that the knight is wearing a mask of some kind, to help it concentrate thought and soul. This is because of how the health bar looks in the game. The following is: the knight is Karl Marx, debunked, 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 debunked. He's actually Mr. Beast. Clearly the knight cannot be Mr. Beast, come on. Bumjay states that Mr. Beast and the knight have similar color schemes, and he points to obviously brown hair as black. Later he states that the knight has a lot of money, but that is not true. The knight starts out having 0 geo, so in short, broke as fuck. Next up, Debunking the knight is Karl Marx, LeBron James, Sayori, Genghis Khan theories debunked. Tovarish RT4 states that the knight is actually Dio Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Now I am Dio's friend IRL, and let me tell you, this guy has emotions and a voice. Unlike the knight, who doesn't. This video also states that they both have capes, and so does the protagonist of Deltarune. However, I must disagree. Dio is not wearing a cape, it's a scarf. I must say, all these theories make people forget what's the difference between a scarf and a cape. A scarf, as Wikipedia states, is a long piece of fabric that is worn on or around the neck, shoulders or head. Meanwhile, a cape is a clothing accessory or a sleeveless outer garment of any length that hangs loosely and connects either at the neck or shoulders. They usually cover the back, shoulders and arms. Now, what Dio's scarf covers, depending on whether it's the manga or anime, is his neck, and in the anime, his back. The knight's cape, meanwhile, goes all the way down to its hips. Chris from Deltarune does have something akin to a cape, so I do agree with that, although the color is much different from the knight's color scheme. Also, the video states that the knight's nail is basically a sword, which is untrue. For it to resemble the style of sword that Chris uses, it would need to have a crossguard, which the nail does not have. It is also worth mentioning that Chris's blade expands outwards and only starts going inwards to connect at the tip at the end of the blade, while the nail expands outwards closer to the hilt and comes to a point throughout the rest of the blade. The next video is Hollow Knight is Karl Marx, debunked, 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 debunked. Well, this guy is German. Another one is proving the knight from Hollow Knight is actually Stonehenge. Well, to be true, Stonehenge is in my area of expertise, as I am an English studies student, so I do know a little bit about it. Stonehenge, as the convenient world building of Earth states, was likely a political or social gathering spot, given that was the purpose of other henges. Although not confirmed, we might also speculate that it had some astrological or faith connotations. Now why this makes me think the night is not Stonehenge is because astrology requires the sky to be open, and in the world of Hollow Knight, we are actually never confirmed to be on the surface, outside of the spot in the Godseeker's memory. This and the fact that the knight can move around is what proves this theory incorrect. Although I must say, he did have some good calls with this one, and it is somewhat close to my own theory, so shout out to Bakel Behemoth for being so close to the truth. And finally, debunking the Hollow Knight character conspiracy. The creator here, Dino Axolotl, states that the real knight is the friends we made along the way. But that cannot be true. If it is, then what's the purpose of all this? Why am I 2,309 words into making this script. Why all the effort all these creators put out? No. There must be a right answer. I refuse to believe it ends like this. Fortunately, he ends the video asking who the knight is. And I have the answer. Firstly, let us take a look at the defining characteristics of the knight. The knight is small. It has a simple design. It, much like other vessels, is easily customizable to create OCs. It has its nail, which has a triangular shape. It has its big eyes, and some kind of fabric covering most of its body. It has 2 appendages growing out of its head. It has 4 limbs. Now, the smarter of you might have already got on to what I'm talking about. Yes, the knight is a labubu. Think about it. When were the labubus created? Wait. 2015. What does this mean? I thought I had it. This must have been it. Where did my fury go? What are you, ghost? Wait. Ghost? A ghost is a monster. What's the most popular monster? Grendel, yes. This is the ultimate truth. Here is why the knight is actually Beowulf, a new verse translation by Seamus Heaney, bilingual edition. Some would say that it cannot be true. A book is dead. An object. It cannot move. Guess what? If you throw it, it moves. Now, will the knight move without player input? Wrong. You need to press a button to see the knight move. It is directed by your action, your will, much like a book. Obviously, let us take a look at the color schemes. The book cover is mostly black, much like the majority of the knight's body is black. The title is in the dark shade of blue, similar to the knight's cloak. The text and the pages are white. Now some of you may ask, well, if the colors are the same, then why is the chainmail on the cover if it doesn't match any color on the knight? Well, it's symbolic. Think about who primarily wore chainmail. That's right, knights. What is the most common name given to the protagonist of Hollow Knight? Knight. There is no other explanation. Now, let us take a look at the timeline. This edition of Beowulf has been published in the year 2000, so let us work with the dates of Hollow Knight's and Silksong's releases, those being 2017 and 2025. If we subtract 2000 from each of these, we get 17 and 25. Now let's see the 17th and 25th verses in the poem. The glorious Almighty made this man renowned, and is the path to power among people everywhere. If we take the first part of the 17th line and the second part of the 25th line, we get the glorious Almighty, power among people everywhere. Now this is obviously something that refers to the Pale King. Worms in the game are regarded as really powerful beings in many lands. In what game is the Pale King a character in? Say it with me. Hollow Knight. Now what can we say about the creators? If we take a look at William Pellen's page on Wikipedia, we can decode this carefully hidden message. Alliteration. Now what poem could possibly use alliteration? That's right, Beowulf. Now let's look at the translator of Beowulf. Do you know what Seamus Heaney wrote? A poetry collection called Electric Light. Now what is an electric light but the charged lumaflies from Hollow Knight? They give off life in the normal state and now are conducting electricity. Coincidence? I think not. Furthermore, not only does the poem talk about the Pale King, it also has the word worm plainly stated on a page. Things couldn't be more obvious. And lastly, the author mentions this concept called Vyrd. It's essentially fate, something that cannot be influenced, motion set in stone. Let us think about the events of Hallownest's history. Could it have played out differently? No. because Verd was what was compelling the Pale King to arrive in Hollowness, and he couldn't fight against it. The story of Hollow Knight was fated to happen, much like the story of Beowulf. This is truly a Verd discussion. With this, I would like to thank everyone who made it this far. If anyone attempts to disprove my video, I shall retaliate with analysis of each word in the poem to find more proof on why the knight is this exact edition of Beowulf.